Imagine standing on Earth millions of years ago. The world looked completely different. There were no cities, no buildings, no roads, only endless forests, wide grasslands, rivers, and mountains. Huge animals walked across the land. Dangerous predators hunted constantly. And somewhere in that ancient world, the story of humanity quietly began. Long before modern humans existed, many different human species lived on Earth. Some of them looked very different from us. Some were shorter. Some were stronger. Some had smaller brains. But all of them were part of the long journey that eventually led to modern humans. Scientists call this process human evolution. It took millions of years, and during that time, many different human species appeared. Some survived for hundreds of thousands of years. Others disappeared quickly. But each species helped shape the future of humanity. To understand our origins, we must travel far back in time, more than 6 million years ago. At that time, our ancestors were not fully human. They were closer to ancient primates. They lived mostly in forests. They climbed trees. They moved on four legs. But the planet was changing. Climate shifts slowly transformed large forests into open grasslands. Food became harder to find. Life became more dangerous. Some primates began adapting to these new conditions. Instead of living only in trees, they started spending more time on the ground. One of the most important changes in this period was walking upright. Standing on two legs allowed them to see further across the grasslands. It also allowed them to carry food or objects. This was the beginning of bipedal movement, and it was one of the most important steps in human evolution. One of the early ancestors connected to this stage was known as Australopithecus. These creatures lived between 4 and 2 million years ago. They were smaller than modern humans. Their brains were much smaller as well, but they could walk upright. Fossils discovered in Africa show that Australopithecus had a mixture of human and ape characteristics. Their arms were still long. Their bodies were adapted both for climbing and walking. Life during this time was extremely difficult. Large predators hunted constantly. Early human ancestors had very few defenses. They had no advanced weapons. They had no shelters. Survival depended on cooperation. Groups stayed together for protection. They searched for food. Across large areas, they gathered fruits, roots, and plants. Sometimes they scavenged meat left behind by predators. Even though they were primitive, Australopithecus represented a critical step toward becoming human. Millions of years later, a new species appeared, Homo habilis. This species lived around 1 million years ago. The name Homo habilis means handy man. Scientists gave them this name because they created some of the first stone tools in human history. These tools were simple, sharp stones, broken pieces of rock, but they were extremely useful. With sharp stones, early humans could cut meat. They could break bones. They could scrape animal hides. This allowed them to access food that earlier species could not. Eating meat provided more energy. More energy helped support brain growth. Over time, human brains slowly became larger, and with larger brains came new abilities. Problem solving improved. Communication became more complex. Groups began cooperating in more organized ways. Human intelligence was beginning to evolve, but an even more important species would soon appear. Around 1.8 million years ago, Homo erectus emerged. This species represented a major turning point in human evolution. Homo erectus had a much larger brain than Homo habilis. Their bodies were taller and stronger. They were built for traveling long distances. Unlike earlier species, Homo erectus did not remain in one region. They began migrating across the world. Fossils have been discovered across Africa, Asia, and parts of Europe. This suggests that Homo erectus was one of the first human species to spread across continents. They adapted to different climates, different landscapes, different food sources. But perhaps their most important discovery was fire. Fire changed everything. With fire, humans could cook food. Cooking made meat easier to digest. It also released more energy from food. These moments may have been the beginning of storytelling and culture. Life was still extremely dangerous, but fire gave humans a powerful advantage. Homo erectus survived for a very long time. In fact, they were one of the longest surviving human species in history. They lived for nearly 2 million years. But eventually, new human species began to appear. One of them was Homo heidelbergensis. This species lived around 600,000 years ago. Scientists believe that Homo heidelbergensis may be the common ancestor of both Neanderthals and modern humans. They were skilled hunters. They created more advanced tools. They lived in organized groups. Their intelligence continued increasing, and from this species to different evolutionary paths began. One path led to Neanderthals. The other path led to Homo sapiens. Neanderthals appeared around 400,000 years ago. They lived mostly in Europe and Western Asia. Neanderthals were incredibly strong. Their bones were thicker than modern humans. Their muscles were powerful. Their bodies were perfectly adapted for cold environments. During the Ice Age, large parts of Europe were covered with glaciers. Temperatures were extremely low, yet Neanderthals survived. They hunted massive animals like mammoths and bison. These hunts required planning and teamwork. No single hunter could defeat such enormous animals alone. Groups worked together to surround their prey. They used stone spears and carefully crafted tools. But Neanderthals were not just hunters. Modern research shows that they had complex social lives. They cared for injured members of their groups. Some skeletons show healed broken bones. This means that other members helped them survive during recovery. They also buried their dead. Archaeologists have discovered burial sites where bodies were carefully placed into the ground. Sometimes flowers or objects were placed near the body. This suggests Neanderthals may have had early spiritual beliefs. They were not primitive creatures. They were intelligent humans. Humans who lived, hunted, and survived in one of the harshest environments on Earth. But another species was about to appear, and that species would change everything. Around 300,000 years ago, a new human species emerged in Africa. This species was Homo sapiens, modern humans. At first, Homo sapiens looked very similar to other human species, but there were important differences. Their brains were slightly larger, their skulls were shaped differently, and their ability to communicate was far more advanced. Language may have been one of the most powerful tools Homo sapiens ever developed. With language, humans could share complex ideas. They could teach skills to younger generations. Knowledge could be passed down across time. This allowed human societies to become more organized, more innovative, more adaptable. Over thousands of years, Homo sapiens began expanding beyond Africa. Small groups migrated into the Middle East. From there, they slowly spread across Europe and Asia. Eventually, they reached Australia, and much later, the Americas. Humans were becoming a global species. But when Homo sapiens entered new regions, they were not alone. Other human species already lived there. In Europe, Neanderthals dominated the landscape. For thousands of years, these two human species lived side by side. They hunted similar animals. They occupied similar environments. Scientists believe there may have been both competition and interaction between them. Genetic research has revealed something fascinating. Neanderthals and modern humans actually interbred. This means that they had children together. Today, many people around the world still carry small amounts of Neanderthal DNA. This is living evidence of those ancient encounters. But eventually, Neanderthals disappeared. Around 40,000 years ago, they vanished from the fossil record. Scientists still debate exactly why this happened. Some believe climate changes made survival more difficult. Others believe competition with Homo sapiens played a role. It is possible that several factors combined together. But Neanderthals were not the only human species to disappear. Many others vanished as well. Homo erectus disappeared. Homo floresiensis disappeared. Homo naledi disappeared. One by one, the branches of the human family tree faded away, until only one species remained: Homo sapiens, modern humans. Why did we survive when others did not? Scientists believe several factors played a role. One important factor was cooperation. Humans developed the ability to form very large social groups. These groups shared information, they shared resources, they supported each other during difficult times. Another advantage was technology. Humans began creating more advanced tools. Stone blades became sharper. Weapons became more effective. Eventually, humans developed bows and arrows. These technologies made hunting safer and more successful. Humans also began creating art. Ancient cave paintings discovered in places like France and Spain revealed something extraordinary. Early humans were expressing ideas through images. They painted animals. They painted hunting scenes. These paintings are more than 30,000 years old. They show that humans were already capable of imagination and creativity. Culture was evolving. Society was becoming more complex. Humans built shelters. They created clothing from animal skins. They adapted to cold climates and harsh environments. Wherever humans went, they found ways to survive. Over time, humans developed agriculture. Instead of constantly moving to find food, they began growing plants. They domesticated animals. Permanent settlements appeared. Villages turned into cities. Civilizations emerged. Technology continued advancing. Tools became machines. Machines became computers. And eventually humans developed technologies powerful enough to explore space. All of this progress came from a long evolutionary journey that began millions of years ago. From small primates living in forests, to early humans walking across African plains, to powerful hunters surviving the Ice Age, to modern humans building global civilizations. The story of humanity is not simple. It is a story filled with countless generations, countless struggles, countless adaptations. But one thing remains clear. Humans did not appear suddenly. We are the result of millions of years of evolution. And deep within our DNA lies the memory of those ancient ancestors who walked the earth long before us. Their story shaped our world, and in many ways, it still lives inside us today.